Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Robert from Islam for Europeans, and I'm joined by two very good brothers and good friends of mine from Gastonia, North Carolina. We have Asad, who has, please subscribe to his channel, The Straight Path Podcast. How are you doing today, Asad?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm doing quite well. I'm glad to be here.
I'm good to have you. Glad to have you on Islam for Europeans for the first time.
Yeah.
And also we have brother Abdur Rahman from Knowledge North. Please subscribe to his channel as well. He's from the UK. How are you doing, Abdur Rahman?
Splendid, alhamdulillah. How you guys doing?
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, very good, very good. I really relieved after the Edward Dutton interview. I just thought that so many things could have gone wrong, but alhamdulillah, like may Allah reward us. I'm saying us as Islam for Europeans because it was a group effort. Like you guys, I'm not the most knowledgeable Muslim in the world, but I've surrounded myself with a good team, alhamdulillah, so they can provide answers and better responses, and we can flesh these things out. So this interview is like a year in the making because we originally found Edward talking to Keith and Richard regarding Islam, and then we took it upon ourselves to kind of like get ourselves involved and get the Mad Mamluks involved. And after that, like it was still a lot to be desired because there's a lot of things. I don't know if you've read, I know Abdur Rahman, you've read Ed Dutton's book. Well, they changed the name of it, but it was originally called Why Islam Makes You Stupid but Also Means You'll Conquer the World.
What's it called now?
Islam and Evolutionary Perspective.
Oh, okay.
They changed it a good bit.
Yeah. No, it got banned from like Amazon, the name, so we had to change it.
Oh, okay.
But he took, the thing is there were still a lot of some things that were, I guess, inaccurate in his book. But the thing was, he was taking those inaccurate things and somehow putting a positive spin on it, in that Islam increases ethnocentrism. So instead of trying to just blast the guy, I think because he was very genuine about wanted to know more about Islam. I think this interview was a good approach because we just wanted to sort of like steer him in the right direction because there's so much misinformation out there. So I think in that regard it was kind of a success. So what were your general thoughts on the interview I had with Ed Dutton, Abdul Rahman?
Yeah, I thought it was positive. I saw, and of course that's the nature of these things, that he was firing on all cylinders, and so then you'll hear three attacks, if you can call it that, and by the time you get through number one, there's another three. So obviously you're always playing catch up. It's just the nature of the game, nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But even so, by and large, what you were able to respond to, I thought that was good. It's good for his audience just to see someone, a Muslim, because that audience is not likely to listen to anyone who doesn't look, European due to their, racial prejudices. So it's just good for them to see that a Muslim can be articulate, can string a sentence together. That itself may be the first breaking of a barrier for dawah, that, oh, wow, these people can speak our language without insulting us. And he's a Muslim at the same time, but he doesn't look like one. Even that itself is hopefully some form of thaw in their ice wall around them, inshallah. And then anything beyond that, inshallah, hopefully is a bonus.
Inshallah. Yeah. Asad, what'd you think?
What's it called? I watched it all the way through. I was driving around town listening to it, and alhamdulillah, I think you did a wonderful job. And this is not to inflate your ego or anything like that. I know you're a humble brother, but always want to put that out there. But alhamdulillah, I think you did a wonderful job. You answered his questions with a lot of knowledge. Like, you came in prepared. And there were some questions which, if you would have asked me, I would have been like, you got to give me some time. I got to come up with the answers. And alhamdulillah, you came in, you answered the questions. And, obviously I was looking through the comment section. That's something I do. And people were not focused on your answers. They were just focused on the fact that you're a white guy who's Muslim and why are you Muslim? So
yeah, the thing is, those kind of angry voices, they kind of drowned out the the ones that are more positive to it. And if you look at the Odyssey video, where we can post a link down there, it was 42 likes to 25 dislikes, and obviously not all of those must have come from my crew. So there was a lot of positives. A lot of people, they enjoyed it, and it's this type of crowd. Their opinions and thoughts on Islam, and Abdur Rahman, he's been kind of following this crowd as well. It's not your normal Tommy Robinson types. I mean, their opinions on Islam vary from negative to positive and everywhere in between. It's just it's just a bit of kind of like they kind of just miseducated on the subject, I guess. But I think Ed was very brave for having me on, just because he's gonna he got a lot of backlash just for having me on.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of people are just like, "Why are you hosting this, Ed?" and everything, and he doesn't care. He's the kind of person who wants to know the truth above all else.
I mean, you're pretty gracious and tame. Yeah, I don't think you threw any barbs out there or anything like that.
Well, it was more of the sense of that some people were just like, yeah, why have a Muslim on at all? I don't think it was just me per se. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, in his crowd, they have, pretty positive attitudes towards Islam itself. But let's get into some of the things that we kind of missed, or some of the things that we could just like kind of elaborate on. I know me and Abdur Rahman talked about this. One was that he said, one of the things that Ed said, and maybe you can touch on this, Abdur Rahman, is that does Islam increase the number of incels due to polygamy or hypergamy? So what would be your response to that, Abdur Rahman?
Oh, Bismillah. So what he essentially claimed is that if everyone was to have 4 wives, as Islam suggesting it kind of endorses that, then you will have a lot of unmarried men, and they would end up going around in gangs, raping and creating all kinds of craziness. They'd become involuntarily celibate. But there's just no evidence for that in 1400 years of not just Islam, but polygamy generally. Polygamy does not take away the options for partners from men. What it does is that those women who are socially mobile anyway would gravitate towards those men who have means above and beyond the rest of the men. So these would be extremely wealthy or high status individuals, or conquerors, or kings, or whatever they might be, scholars, people who have some kind of capital, not just financial, but even maybe intellectual or religious capital. So those women who have a similar kind of need to be in that kind of mobility, they would gravitate towards that. So you never found, certainly within Islam, but even outside of Islam, in our 1400 years of history, you never found groups of men saying that, darn, all the women have gone to those 2%ers who have who have enough means to look after more than one wife. So that's one thing. It's just there's zero data on it, and even inside and outside of Islamic societies, it doesn't happen. But on top of that, there's always been and always will be more women than men. In fact, there's a specific hadith where the Prophet said a time will come towards the end of time, Yawm al-Qiyamah, where a man will be looking after 50 women. And whatever circumstances lead to that, we know generally throughout time, war is a reality of the human condition, and men generally fight the wars, and there's always more women left over than men. And were it not for Islam allowing not just virgins, but also divorcees and widows to get remarried, then what would happen to these poor ladies, or their children for that matter? So there's just no data for it. It's a really nonsensical assertion he was making.
Anything you want to add to that, Asad?
I think Brother Abdurrahman summed it up perfectly.
Yeah. Anything to add on the FGM issue? Aside from my Freudian slip at the end.
Whoa.
I missed it.
I missed it as well, I guess.
Oh, I said I'm glad I nipped that in the bud.
Oh, you missed that one? Yeah, I remember that.
I thought that was deliberate. I thought it was deliberate.
I thought it was deliberate too.
That's me and my autistic nature, I guess.
No, I thought you did that on purpose.
Same here.
No, I think I covered it pretty well. I mean,
no, you covered it pretty well. And I think one of the issues which we discussed beforehand, over messaging is, I think a lot of times these sort of activities or these sort of things are more cultural in nature, and they're found in certain parts of society. And I'll just use an example. There's certain elements of culture which are found in Pakistan and India, and they go into Sikhism, they go into Hinduism, they go into the Muslim community as well, and all people are doing it, and it has nothing to do with any Islamic religion at all. So I feel like with the FGM, that's what it is. A lot of times it has nothing to do with the religion, and people are so ingrained in their culture that they do it, and then when it happens and it turns out horribly, people get scarred and they blame the religion. because people use their religion as a crutch.
Just a question. I said, FGM, is that practiced at all in the South Asian subcontinent, or
I
is
I
it very
don't,
rare?
as far as I know, like, our family's from Pakistan, is from Karachi. In Karachi, you don't hear about it at all. I can't talk about, going further north in Pakistan or anything like that. I know culture, but this goes a little bit deeper. Gets pretty personal.
Yeah, true. Let's see here. What else?
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Just on the FGM thing, because it's acknowledged by academics and social scientists around the world generally that FGM is specifically a Nile Valley thing, from the Upper Nile, Egypt, all the way down, and then it crosses into the Horn of Africa. And the only reason it goes into the Arab world is because Yemen is on the other side of the Horn of Africa, the Straits of Hormuz, not Hormuz, what would you call it? Straits, across the Red Sea anyway. The Gulf of Aden. Well, you correct me there. So, and even in Egypt, the Muslims would often go to Coptic Christians to get the FGM done. And it is FGM. It's not the, it's what they call the pharaonic clipping. So it is actually a nasty, disgusting, and very, oppressive operation, slicing off at the very least the clitoris, and maybe even more than that. So it's got nothing to do with Islam. The whole point of these things in Islam is like with the male circumcision, which is close to mandatory, but even in some schools it's not even that. But with the female one, it's far less. But with the male one, it increases, not reduces sexual pleasure, because without getting graphic, the tip is less sensitive, so it has more staying power, and it's similar kind of issues, and it's very much to do with climate and the hypersexualization around the tropics, and so many things. But it's certainly not meant to. It's very important to take away from the pleasure of the woman. It's got other reasons for it, but even then, it's got nothing to do with the actual mutilation, which is practiced by Christians, animists, as well as Muslims in that specific region. I think the Prime Minister of Kosovo currently is a female. She's a Muslim. I guarantee she's never heard of it. None of her family have had it. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan, or the current, if she's still a female Prime Minister of Bangladesh, wouldn't have had it. Never heard of it. It's a very localized tradition. There is a version of it within the Sunnah, but it's very, very localized. And the one point he made, which it kind of answers itself, is he said that most of the fundamentalist, quote unquote, Muslims he's aware of, they're against it. Why is that? That's not by accident. That's because, quote unquote, fundamentalists stay away from things that are not really part of their religion, such as mutilation of the body.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And like he knows more than the average bear. And I mean, like I said, like I'm glad we were able to get a hold of him before, because if people didn't know who what Dr. Dutton was about, they would think he was just some regular like guy who doesn't like Islam. But really, like it's like he's far more positive on Islam than most people in that crowd. Also, one thing he did bring up is this idea that Muslims, his claim was that Muslims wanted to flee from Islamic societies to the West. And I didn't have much time to address it, but I just said it was correlation, not causation. But a lot of these countries has nothing to do with Islamic societies at all. It's because they've been decimated. So did you want to add anything to that, Asad, or?
I think I'll let Brother Abdur Rahman talk first. I like listening to him, and I get to learn from him. Then my mind opens up.
I don't know about that. Well, let's take the worst scenario, the horrendous example that is the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, Iraq and Sham, Daesh. So one reason many Muslims went there is because they convinced themselves it was Islamic. They refused to listen to the naysayers. They refused to listen to the reality, or to take seriously the horrendous images that were coming of violence and torture and oppression and abuse. And they thought, no, that can't be right. It must be Western propaganda. It must really be a true Islamic state. So these were people, amongst the people who went there were many Westerns, in the thousands. So it's the opposite of what's being claimed. Then it's not that people want to flee from Islam towards Western democracy. In that case, and that's the worst example we can give, you had people who are well integrated, even if not assimilated into the West, many of them converts, and just because there was a notion of an Islamic state, they fled towards it. And of course, it was a big mistake, one of the biggest mistakes of their lives. But then you have better examples such as Turkey, Pakistan, parts of the Gulf, many well-to-do again, liberally raised Muslims are wanting to go to these places because they see them as more Islamic. So it's the opposite of what's being said.
Right. Anything to add to that, Asad?
So I mean, this is a rather large topic, and you didn't really even get to address it. About Muslims wanting to leave countries which are, Muslim in nature, or leaving Muslim civilizations. I mean, there's so many issues, and if we start unpacking them, it would take hours and hours and
Yeah.
hours to just go over one country, one region of a country even. But like, coming from a Pakistani background, when we go to Pakistan, sometimes we feel like we're lost. Like, we're like, where are we? Like, this doesn't seem like a Muslim country at all, unfortunately. And I did a podcast episode with the Sheikh from Houston, and we spoke about rape that occurs in Pakistan. Pakistan has a very, has a big problem with rape. And there was a female who got raped on the side of a highway when her car broke down. And when that happened, we were discussing it, and I told the Sheikh, I was like, people say this is a Muslim country. What can we say about it? And he started laughing. He's like, Pakistan isn't a Muslim country. He's like, it's a country with Muslims. So, that's one thing which we have to unpack a lot of times, is people like to say Muslims are leaving Muslim countries or Muslim civilizations. A lot of the countries have Muslims in them, but they're far from Islam. Just to be honest, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, and it's a lot of the times, we don't want to talk about it. I mean, me myself, I'm coming from a completely Western background. I've only been to a Muslim country once. I mean, who am I to talk about these very important issues? But it's from what people tell me, it's a fact, and I mean, we just can't sweep it under the rug anymore. So
No.
I mean, it's tragic, but I mean, it is what it is. Just kind of getting away from more serious topics and getting in some. I guess this isn't as serious, but I guess from a dawah perspective, it's really important. Me myself, I'm one of the I guess I'm one of the few people who converted to Islam, and one of the reasons why I converted to Islam was the miracles in the Quran. To me, I was just blown away. I'm like, there's no way a human being can write this book. It's just physically impossible. And I know that this is a controversial subject now because science is always changing and everything. But still, when you look at it, like, some of these things have been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. I mean, so I know I don't know. I was contemplating, should I bring it up or should I not bring it up? And I know Ed said, okay, this is some type of autistic fantasy or whatever, but
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Some people I know actually did convert to Islam via the the miraculous nature of the Quran. So, what's the dividing line on that? Should we not bring it up, or is it just, I guess, a personal thing, or what kind of precautions do we have to take when we're talking about this stuff? Abdur Rahman?
I'll go to Asad first.
What's that? Oh,
He's like, we're gonna go to
Asad.
Asad. So one thing which we have to understand is, when we're discussing the miracles of the Quran, especially with a very non-Muslim crowd, they're gonna take it very, very, very lightly. They're used to coming, if they're coming from a Christian background, a Hindu background, these backgrounds, they're used to hearing these like super tall tales, and they're just, a lot of times, not to offend anybody, but they're just that. And even having conversations with priests and preachers and pastors and clergy of the Christian background, a lot of times they're like, yeah, in our books, admitting that in our books there are things which have been fabricated to make it sound more like a novel or a book, or some sort of like a drama. And then you take Islam, which has a very serious nature, not to scare people off or anything like that, but the Quran is a serious book. And when it talks about miracles, it doesn't talk about miracles to entice people through some sort of drama or dramatic nature or something like that. It's telling them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ultimate and the absolute, has the power to do these things. And one of the problems we run into a lot of times with Muslims is they misunderstand miracles. And what's it called? In Urdu, I know there's two separate words. There's karamat and there's mu'jiza. Mu'jiza is like the miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala performs. And karamat is like, something miraculous that happened. So what happens is, a lot of times Muslims, they lose sight of that, and they'll start discussing things which seem miraculous in nature, So for example, somebody became Muslim once, and they came to the masjid, and myself and another brother, we were walking him through all of the steps of, how to slowly and gradually, walk into Islam. Not like you got to pray 5 times a day, slowly and gradually. We're explaining. And there's another elderly man sitting there, and he's explaining to him about how he went for Umrah one time, and there was pigeons flying over, and they wouldn't fly over the Kaaba, and which is not, it's not really like, oh wow, miracle or anything like that. And afterwards we asked him, he's like, yeah, I was confused by it. He's like, why would anybody mention that? He's like, it didn't make any sense at all. So people have to understand that when we're explaining miracles to a crowd which is heavily non-Muslim, heavily anti-Muslim, that you have to come from some education, and you have to be able to explain it. And if there's any questions that as to did this happen, and you did a good job when he asked, when you were discussing the miracle of the moon splitting, you said a lot of people became Muslim after that. You're like, this is the proof. So you came from an educated background, you took one miracle, you explained it, and when he did a rebuttal of a sort, you had something to prove to him that, look, the conversion rate went up. And then he didn't come back after that. He just went on a different path, like, oh, the autistic fantasy sort of thing now, the billah. But you have to come from an educated background, and you have to be able to provide further proof that what difference did it make, because they're not going to believe the miracle as soon as you say it. That if you say, oh, Hazrat Khalid bin Walid, for example, he went to one of the battles and he drank a vial of poison, they're like, that's just a tale you're making up. But if you're able to provide proof of what happens afterwards, they still won't believe it, but they can't contend with it. And that's what my understanding is of how you have to explain the miracles, and you also have to be able to back them up.
Yeah. Yeah, the moon splitting thing. Wasn't there a picture of it from China? I don't know if that's proven or not. Is that just a? Abdur Rahman, can you comment on that? Do you know anything about that? That they actually saw it in China, and then somebody like drew a picture of it, or
I don't know. I don't know. Something
I don't know
I
either.
I know
I
there
didn't
was
I've
mention that.
heard I've heard that they saw it. What they said is they saw it in India. That's what I've heard.
Okay.
I'd have to
yes,
go look.
yes.
I'd have to
Yeah.
go look at that. And they said they had some sort of a device, which they still have it somewhere. It was some sort of a device they had built where they can take a look at the moon, and that's how they observed it. I'd have to go look at that, properly, and come back, because it's been a little while since I've researched into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. Well, maybe a couple more things. Like, I know, had I done that interview again, like, alhamdulillah, went well. Like, I was making dua that it didn't, completely implode. But, if I could go back, I think right off the bat, I actually had an opening statement, which I never got to. You just went right into it. But, like, I guess since I never explained what our on the ground solutions are, for Islam in Europe and converts and things like that. That never really got explained from the get go. And like, I don't know if you saw the interview between Mark and Daniel. Like, I guess Daniel was taking the whole like what if scenario, like what if all Europeans converted to Islam en masse, which is completely unrealistic. I mean, alhamdulillah if that happened, but I mean, like our deal is what's happening to converts on the ground. And like by providing like a third space, where I mean all Muslims can pray there, but still it's catered to our specific needs, and then that way like you sort of you allow like the Islam to be represented within that regional culture. So I think not having not explaining that right away, I think people were just getting into the whole like what if scenario, like like, oh, all Europeans are going to convert to Islam en masse. But really all we're asking is we convert to Islam, like don't kick us out of the house, like don't write us out of the will, like don't abuse us or anything, because the more you do that, like the more difficult it makes us for us, and the more we're just going to exit our communities. I mean, this is what happened on a macrocosm level. When we look at existent indigenous European Muslim communities in Andalus in Spain, the island of Crete, Hungary, all these indigenous European Muslim populations were kicked out, and they had no place else to go but the Muslim world. So I don't know. Do you think that it kind of went off on that tangent where we just got into this whole? Because I didn't look at the chat, but from what I could gauge from the chat, there was just people that were just really thinking, oh, well, this guy wants to just convert everyone to Islam en masse. So Asad's laughing.
I'm just like, I was reading the chat, and it's just like, they were commenting about your pirate outfit. Um,
Which was actually
they
a 19th century French traditionalist outfit.
apparently you were resembling the Pirates of the Caribbean more than that to the crowd, but it's that, that's what they saw. But I think one of the problems, I don't want to put it like this, but one
Hmm.
of the problems is the white American, for example, I live in America, the white American community will never be able to have a sort of, that experience because there's already existing cultural Muslim societies here.
Hmm.
Now, I work for a charity organization, and we go to different countries. There's indigenous Mexican Muslim populations in the southern tip of Mexico, close to Guatemala. These people, there's many different groups of them. They have their own masajid. They have their own practices. They're very poor, and they don't get help by the people or the government
Hmm.
because they are Muslim at the end of the day. But the one advantage they have is they're untouched for the most part by any other culture. So they're able to practice an Islam which is comfortable for them, and they don't have any like Arab, Pakistani, Indian, African influence. The women are wearing hijab, but they're wearing their normal Hispanic dresses. The kids are wearing kufis, but they're wearing their normal Hispanic clothing and stuff like that. And you'll see some people once in a while for Jumu'ah or something they'll wear like a thobe, a long shirt. But the people are wearing modest clothing, and they've been able to understand that. In America, in Canada, and Europe, it's going to be hard to be able to do that because majority of the places where, like for example, a person like yourself, Robert, or a Dawood, a David goes to accept Islam, he'll go to a masjid and there's an existing society of cultural Muslims. So a person's never going to be able to get that experience of going to, like we have locally over here, we have Imam John. People aren't going to have the experience of being able to go to Imam John, sit with Imam John, and learn from him and be able to take that and be a white American Muslim. It's so hard.
Hmm.
So for you to explain it to a crowd who already is, like, what the heck? Why is this guy here? It's so hard to explain that. It seems like an imagination at times.
Yeah. Abdur Rahman, anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, I'm obviously a second. It's this concern, isn't it? That, and I think this was in the chat, that the race traitor, that they're not looking at the point of view that you have looked into the theology, the belief system of this religion, its veracity and its claims, its consistency with the message of Jesus Christ, the pure message that most European Christians are familiar with. They're not looking at it like that. They're thinking he's gone Indian, he's gone Turk, he decides he likes spicy food. They're not considering the fact that this is something genuinely spiritual, genuinely rational, in which case it's no more East nor Western than the religion that most people, sorry, I should say these people, most people in Europe, their names are derived from kind of some Semitic biblical name by and large. And most of the society, much of the society and the culture, the laws, the legislation, the culture has a Semitic, in the sense it's a Judeo-Christian, or in reality be a Judo-Christian, Christo-Islamic culture and civilization. So this is the problem, that it's the color gets in the way, the culture gets in the way, like what the brother Asad was saying, that they just immediately think about the immigrant, or the foreigner, Johnny foreigner, rather than looking at Islam for its merits as a belief system and as a practice.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, this is how it's been for centuries. I mean, yeah, but at the very least, like when you look at cities like Toronto, like for Eid prayer in 2019, we went to an Eid prayer outside, and it was the Eid prayer we went to was run by a mosque that was run by the Somali community, and the Eid prayer was 90% Somalis. You know, a block north of that was a Pakistani mosque doing another Eid prayer outside, and it was 95% Pakistanis. And the imam of the Somali masjid was getting angry. He's just like, we should be united and one ummah. Like, why are we having, this division and stuff like that? And I'm just like, I'm thinking, me and my friend are looking at each other like, dude, like, you have to, how about a better way would be to be like, okay, after we're done with the Eid prayer, let's walk over and say Eid Mubarak to our Pakistani brothers. I mean, wouldn't that be a lot more productive? I mean, this is the reality we're living in. It's, I understand that, we want the Muslim Ummah to be unified, but when you're trying to copy and paste that to like a 21st century metropole, I mean, people, they want to, preserve their culture but still be part of the Muslim community. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just something that just, I don't know. Maybe it's something that the ulama just needs to look more into. I mean, because, we're living in a multicultural society now. I mean, for the longest time, even when I first converted, they're just like, yeah, a lot of these, quote unquote cultural masjids, they're haram, they shouldn't exist. And, we should all just be united as one ummah. But whenever a lot of these umbrella masjids, open up, there's, I mean, yeah, it's great to have it, but I mean, it doesn't address all the needs of each sub community. So I don't know. What do anyone have anything to add to that, or?
I mean, I'm gonna say something I said yesterday and the day before. One thing which brings everybody together is a janaza.
Mm-hmm.
As horrible as that sounds, um, the reason is anytime a Muslim passes away in our community, I know this, we'll make an announcement or a plea to people to show up, and people will show up solely based on the fact that the person who passed away is a Muslim.
Mm.
Not that he was black or Pakistani or Arab or stuff. Sometimes somebody prominent in the community passes away, more people show up. But people will show up regardless of this. And they'll go and they'll put him down in the grave, and they'll, put the dirt in, and they'll put in all the effort. And I asked a person from, who comes from a background of being a Christian before. I asked him, I was like, so somebody, and he was African American. I was like, if somebody passes away in the African American church, and people didn't know him per se, but they knew he came to the same church, would they come and join his not burial, his whatever they have, like a gathering at the church? Awake, yeah, like awake. And he's like, generally he's like, no, he's like, if you're not cool with them or you don't know them, he's like, you're not gonna show up. And one time what happened is, I'm gonna keep it short. There was a janazah here. The person who passed away was a Muslim, and one of his last requests was, he's like, make sure that the people who perform my janazah and the people who take care of my whole burial process are Muslims. And we were 5 Muslims there, and there was like 300 people who were not Muslim. And they asked me, they're like, we want you to eulogize him. And I didn't know the guy. And I had to eulogize him, and just spoke about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for like 5-6 minutes. That's all you can do at that point in time, because you don't really know the guy. But there was a sort of respect, because there was, I was from a Pakistani background. There was one guy who's from an Indian background, and then there was 3 African American guys who who also came from different African American backgrounds, and they were somewhat impressed that this group of people who are so different, they came and they honored this guy.
Yeah.
So it comes down to that.
Yeah, that great thing about our deen. I mean, like even in the cities, where there were this kind of divided communities and everything, weddings, funerals, they all like came together, and that's an amazing thing about our religion. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. One last point, Abdur Rahman. You said, or maybe that European communities' self-emasculation is irreversible due to their liberal, laissez-faire approach to faith in God. Only Islam is theologically robust enough to keep people God-focused, i.e. the Sunnah leaves no scope for a wild, aberrational reinterpretation of the fundamental Orthodox creed and praxis. That was kind of a point in itself, but I guess, yeah, I mean, Islam has more, yaqeen, has more certainty to it, and I mean, it obligates people to hold true to these things, as opposed to Christianity, where it's like, okay, they believe, okay, astaghfirullah, Jesus has forgiven all my sins, I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we as Muslims recite every single day when we read Surah Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Quran. We say, Ihdina Salat al-Mustaqim, oh Allah, guide us upon the straight path, which is understood to be the path of the prophets. Salat al-Ladina namta alayhim, those upon whom you've bestowed your grace, غير المغضوب عليهم, not those who've earned your anger. So, and the scholars of the exegetes of the Quran explain that those who earn the anger are that group who knowingly They know the truth, but then they take a different path from it. Wal-dhalin, those who without knowing go astray. So, and sometimes it says, so therefore those who earn God's anger, they are like the scholars who disobey God knowing better. And those who go astray are like the common folk who just don't know any better. And Islam is in between. It's neither of those, in that neither the scholar, neither do we aim, of course, to earn Allah's anger, nor do we innovate and invent the religion. So, and that's what we find in the West, this, pick and mix, if you like. And people want stability, people want certainty, and the Christianity of today, let's just speak about Christianity simply because Judaism, relative terms, is too small as a sample, but the Christianity of today is unrecognizable from the Christianity of 100 years ago, and that was, if not less, and that was unrecognizable from Christianity a few hundred years before that, and completely alien to what we know of the first century of Christians, let alone those who, became Trinitarians following the Council of Nicaea. So Islam doesn't have that. We've had, of course, sects and divisions that broke away, but the Prophet warned us about them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and gave us the tools to recalibrate and to get back to the straight path. And so people recognize that Islam has that robustness, it has that certainty, because the source texts are essentially infallible. Not only did Allah give us the Quran, his verbatim speech, but also the explanation of the Quran in the character and the speech and the mannerisms of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's the book and its interpretation are preserved for us. And in that sense, you will always have an orthodox traditionalist community upon the truth, whereby you can measure any kind of going astray.
Alhamdulillah. Well, that's a great place to wrap up, Abdur Rahman. We're running out of time on Zoom. I need to upgrade. But please subscribe to Knowledge North, Abdur Rahman's website, and also the Straight Path podcast. Asad, Abdur Rahman, thank you so much for having us on, or coming on to my show, sorry. And this is Robert from Islam for Europeans. Take care, everybody. Please subscribe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And then whatever extra time we have, we'll just cut it off, edit it from there. Thank you so much, guys. We wrapped it up in half an hour, which is wonderful. Yeah. So anything in the works, Abdur Rahman, for stuff you're doing on Knowledge North, or?
Yeah, Ottoman Autopsy episode is it 7? It's just, I've got it done. I just need the imagery to match it, and then inshallah